a blessed good evening to one and all. I'm going to do a video of St. John Parish Church. This is this way. First of all, I'm going to start the video here by the junction. This can be referred to as Colleton. This road here will lead you back to Colleton, St. John, via St. John Primary School, which is right here. And it will lead you back to Colleton College, Bath Beach, the Lodge School, the back of the St. John Polyclinic, Pot House, you name it, all in St. John this way. And it can also lead you back to St. Philip as well. This is the St. John Parish Church cemetery here. This road will lead you back to Gold Hill, Pool, Four Roads, back down to Gun Hill, Newberry, that part of a bit of St. John and St. George as well. So I will go into the church cemetery shortly and do a walk around there. This is the church cemetery. Hi. I'm in the parish of St. John, which is to the eastern side of the island at the moment. So this is the church cemetery that is 400 meters away from the church. This is where the people are put down now, interred or buried, whatever you want to call it. It has to be that way because the cemetery in the churchyard is full. So they don't have the cemetery in the churchyard. The cemetery has no vacant space for persons to be laid to rest. No, so that is why they have to put down the people in the church. So this is St. John Church Cemetery. So I will make my way in the churchyard cemetery shortly. Let you guys see how the near look. So my way to the cemetery. No. It says there shall be no erecting of any structures, planting of trees, flowers, or vegetation on any grave or site within the St. John Cemetery unless permission is granted by the rector. So this cemetery is also a part of the churchyard, a part of St. John Parish Church. It is situated 400 meters away from the church. But as I said before, people now have to get buried here because there is no space in the churchyard. So this is where Sir Charles Orphany Williams, known to many Barbadians as Col Williams or C.O. Williams, who was the proprietor and founder of the C.O. Williams Construction Company, is laid to rest. Trevor Marshall, that was the former historian, he was laid to rest here a few weeks ago as well. So this is all inside the St. John Parish Church Cemetery. As I said before, St. John is the parish in which most of the white Barbadian population originated from. Most of them whose ancestors came from Scotland and Ireland, who came to Barbados in the 17 and 1800s as indentured servants. So this is all the church cemetery here. I will show you guys the other half of the cemetery shortly when I get into the church. So Charles Anthony Williams is one of the white Barbadians whose ancestors came from Scotland and Ireland, who was also laid to rest here in St. John's Cemetery, as well as Sir Kiffin Simpson. He is also a descendant from Scotland of one of the white Barbadians. Sir Kiffin Simpson, the guy who owns Simpson Motors, which is the agent for Suzuki vehicles in Barbados. They also specialize in Isuzu, Chevrolet, Mercedes-Benz, Mitsubishi vehicles as well. And he also owns the Sol gas stations in Barbados and in the Caribbean. He is a white Barbadian from St. John, as well as the Goddards that own the Goddard group of companies, with Courtesy Garage, which is the agents for Nissan and Hyundai vehicles in Barbados. There are also white Barbadians from St. John, as well as Professor Henry Fraser, who was a lecturer at university and a heart surgeon. He's another white Barbadian from St. John, as well as Pastor Holmes Williams, who was the founder of the People's Cathedral. He is a white Barbadian from St. John as well. This is the grave of former choir member, singer Enid Gay, and her husband Trevor Gay, all laid to rest here at St. John's Churchyard Cemetery. Enid Gay, her grandchildren, Joshua Gay and David Gay, went to school with me. Both one in primary and one in secondary. She's a well-known person in St. John. Enid Gay is laid to rest here in St. John's Cemetery. Viola Ayana Wayside and Sheila Yvonne Wayside. So the only way somebody will get buried in churchyard now is if it is a boy grave or a well-known person in St. John. As I said before, Trevor Marshall, the historian, was laid to rest here a couple weeks ago, as well as Sir Charles Anthony Williams, known as Cow Williams or C.O. Williams, founder of C.O. Williams Construction Company, and many others are laid to rest. As I said before, St. John's Cemetery is 400 meters away from the church. So now to the church now. Now to the church. Now to the church. So now going to the church. What I should have done is walk across instead of walk further up and then walk back around, instead of walking that side of the road, so that I wouldn't get knocked down by a car or anything like that. Nevertheless, All is good. Nevertheless, all is good. That was a blank corner just now. While vlogging, I have to exercise wisdom and common sense as well. So that is my bad just now. Anyway, making my way over to the church, over to St. John Parish Church. Nevertheless, I'm making my way over to the church. This way we lead back to Martins Bay via Church View, Clifton Hall, and so on, all in St. John. As usual, they have the organ practice. The organ is practicing in the church. This is the church vicarage here, where the priest lives. What I should have done is walk to the back. St. John Parish Church is a historic site here in Barbados. This guys here inside of St. John's Parish Church. Once again. So this is inside of the church. This is the beautiful altar here, and the lovely Barbados, and the beautiful stained glass windows. This is where the choir sits. So this is the inside of the lovely, magnificent St. John Parish Church in memory of Robert Stewart Fraser, born the 15th of October 1903 and died the 6th of April 1993. Parochial treasurer of this parish, born 1944 and died in 1959, and his wife Lauren Mitchinson Fraser, born the 17th of July 1911 and died the 26th of October 1994. They were the parents of Professor Henry Fraser, who was a lecturer at University of the West Indies and heart surgeon as well. This is the pulpit, the mahogany pulpit that is made out of 6 different types of wood: mahogany, cedar, pine, purple heart, and 2 other types of wood to make it 6. loving memory of Carlton Haynes, born at the Castle St. John, Barbados, on the 7th of February 1858, died at Woodlands, Hampshire, England, on the 20th of November 1945, and his wife Helen Georgina Haynes, born in South Africa on the 30th of June 1860, and died in London on the 9th of October 1958. In memory of the Haynes family, who were responsible for the building of St. John's Parish Church.
So from that seat, something went on.
So I want to make my way through to the church cemetery. The statue of Madonna and Child with the infant St. John beneath her feet. This is some tombs under our feet here as well. This is another historical place of interest as well. Our property of the Barbados National Trust. The Barbados National Trust property. Evening. So from here you can get a good view of the east coast. You can get a good view. First of all, we're looking down at the church view in St. John's. You can get a good view of the east coast. St. John's Church is about 1,000 feet high on an escarpment known as Hackerton Cliff. You can see the east coast. This is northeasterly that we're looking at now, which is comprising of St. Joseph, a bit of St. John, St. Joseph, and St. Andrew, the Scotland district side of the island. You can see that the church underwent some facelift, and some of the trees are cut. St. John is an Anglican church. St. John is an Anglican church. St. John's Parish Church, first erected in 1645, destroyed by fire and rebuilt in 1676, destroyed by hurricane and rededicated in 1836. And the church is open daily for tourists to pay a visit. So this is the buttresses here that help support the church. This church was rebuilt and rebuilt several times and destroyed and rebuilt again. As the plaque says, it dates back to 1676. This is the grave of Joseph Briggs, a native of this island and more than 40 years a resident in the colony of British Guyana. And to be gathered unto my people, bury me with my fathers. So, as I said before, my mother is a Mears from St. Joseph. So I'm a part of the Mears family as well. My mother is a Mears. from St. Joseph in a place called Barbados. My mother, one of my aunts, and two uncles are marriages. My grandfather was a marriage, which should be her father, were marriages from St. Joseph. And my first two aunts are Levines, which is my mother's first two sisters. Before the marriage will be Levines from St. Thomas, between Carrington's Village and the Vault Road. The grave of Samuel Lewis Mears, born 1834 and died in 1922. By grace are you saved through faith and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God. Ephesians 11 verse 8. Erected by his children. So this is all the St. John Parish Church here. This is the map showing you the tombs in the churchyard. This is the grave of Iris Bannocky and her grandmother, and her Ivory Branch Bradshaw, née McConney, died the 30th of August 1974 at the age of 91, and her daughter Iris Branch Bannocky, Silver Crown of Merit, who died the 2nd of September 1988. Iris Branch Bannocky was the founder of Andromeda Botanical Gardens, which is in St. Joseph, just above Bathsheba, on the east coast as well, going down into Bathsheba, St. Joseph. When she died in 1988, the gardens was then entrusted to the Barbados National Trust, which it still is today. Iris Branch Bannocky was a horticulturist. She used to deal with plants and so on. She was the founder of Andromeda Botanical Gardens. This is the colored tomb section where the colored people are there to rest. The grave of Robert P. Skinner, Richard Chase. So these are the black planter class that are laid to rest here. E. Thorne Gollett, who was the grandfather of Ralph Thorne, who is the current leader of the opposition, politician and current leader of the opposition, and Sir Fred Gollett. E. Thorne Gollett was laid to rest here. So this is the church cemetery now. As I said before, they do not lay people to rest in here unless it is a by grave. The grave of Irvin Wilfred Weeks and Winifred Ursula Weeks. The grave of Eustace C. Gill, husband of Marie Gill, born 1903 and died in 1993, rest in peace. Bernard Leslie Barrow, died the 23rd of April 1962 at the age of 88 years. Bernard Leslie Barrow was also a black planter class, a plantation owner. The grave of Ambrosine A. Barrow, born 1880 and died in 1942. The grave of Charles Miller Austin of Malvern Plantation. He was the first black man in Barbados and in St. John to own a plantation. Charles Miller Austin will be the grandfather of third Prime Minister, Sir Harold Bernard St. John, known as Bree St. John. He was the third Prime Minister who succeeded Tom Adams as Prime Minister from 1985 to 1986. You can see the sea below here, all the East Coast. As I said before, very seldom now that people will get buried here. Not saying that it will not happen, but it is a very unlikely situation that somebody will be buried here. The grave of Ferdinando Paleologus, who was the vestryman. He originally from Scotland, from England, and he was the church warden of this parish from 1655 to 1656, and vestryman 20 years, died the 3rd of October 1678. It was said that he was buried under the organ loft in the church. When the church was destroyed by the hurricane of 1831, it was said that Ferdinando Paleologus was buried under the organ loft here in St. John's Parish Church. Then afterwards, they took him out of the church and placed him in the churchyard, buried up right here in this tomb here. And the most interesting grave here in memory of Thomas Henry Seeley, who was buried upright. It was said that he wanted to be buried upright so that he can see the view. And his family and loved ones took him seriously. And he was buried upright. But I don't think that Thomas Henry Seeley can see the view now. But that was his wish. He was the son of Sir John Seeley and Anne Isabella Seeley. St. John's Parish Church has some of the oldest graves in the Caribbean. You can see that some of the tombs here are getting paved and getting, not paved, but painted or whatever you call it. This is all the score here. So this is a very historic church and a very interesting church with a commanding view as well. The sundial here, where those people are on. They took down the binoculars here that were for distant viewing. This is the sea here, the east coast, southeasterly now, looking down to Bath Village, the Bath beaches, and you can see down to Pothouse Village here. And you can see all across the, what's called it, St. Philip, southeast, where the East Point Lighthouse is. It was a good tour nevertheless. The grave of David Thompson, our Prime Minister. He was about the 5th Prime Minister, me see. Errol Barrow the 1st, Tom Adams the 2nd, Bruce St. John the 3rd, Lloyd Erskine Sandiford the 4th, he was about the 6th Prime Minister. David Thompson, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, was the last Prime Minister to be buried in this cemetery. He was the last person to be buried here. He was the parliamentary representative for St. John for 23 years, from 1987 until his death in 2010. He was originally from England. He was born in England to Barbadian parents, a white mother and black father, both from Barbados. But he lived in Barbados all his life, David Thompson. Born on 25th of December, Christmas Day, 1961, and died the 23rd of October, 2010, on my birthday, on my 17th birthday. He was the Prime Minister of Barbados from 2008 to 2010. He served briefly as Prime Minister from 2008 to 2010. Then, when he died, his wife, Mara Thompson, of St. Lucia National, took after him as the parliamentary representative for St. John when they had the by-election on the 20th of January 2011. Then she took over as Member of Parliament for St. John from 2011 to 2018. I think his mother, Margaret Knight, who was a white Barbadian, is still alive. I think so. She will have to be in her 90s, they know, 93 or 94, somewhere around there. But I'm not sure about his father. Anyhow, thanks for watching and have a blessed evening. Enjoy. Stay tuned.